Hello and welcome to another episode of Finders Keepers, the podcast that helps you find the best keepers for your keeper and dynasty leagues. I'm your host, Jordox, and this week I have a very special guest to help make sense of the AAMI Community Series, which we've just seen, but also to have a conversation around the strategies involved in how to approach a new startup keeper league. Who is my guest? Well, he's a man that I think most will have seen his work before. He's been doing it for the fantasy community for a very long time. It is Fry. Mate, welcome to Finders Keepers. It is an honour to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Jordox. I've been a fan of the work you've been putting out there. Helped me in a number of redrafts and keeper leagues now. So, it's nice to return the favour and sit down and talk about some real footy. We got real footy over the weekend.
Yes, but the closest version to real footy we've seen so far. And then it becomes even more real. And that's it. That's what it's all about, mate. And we did start a new keeper league draft that we'll talk about a bit later as well, which was a bit of fun in the last week. And keen to get your thoughts on A, how it went, and B, what your strategy was. But we'll dive into that later. Before we get started with the community series, though, just give us a bit of a background on your journey as a content creator, as we call it. Your experiences and where it all started. Because, I said before the pod, it's awesome to virtually meet you, because I've been reading your work for years and years and years. So, where did it all begin and how long you've been doing it for?
Well, I work as a high school teacher, and when I first came out of uni, I was doing a lot of relief work. So there was plenty of downtime as I was glorified babysitter for a few years there. So I've been a sports snuffy my whole life. And then just one day I cold emailed the Dream Team Talk boys and said, look, I'd love to potentially write on your website. And that was back in late 2016. And here we are in 2026. So I've been, like I said, a big connoisseur of all sports, but AFL as a proud West Australian's always been a favourite of mine, along with some basketball and bits and pieces. So started my own website just on the couple of years before COVID, and then just kept building layers to it from there. Had a Patreon running last year. I've hit pause on that for the 2026 season. Just got some other life admin that takes priority, but no, it's something that I've loved as a bit of an outlet. It hasn't seemed like work, so I've been able to justify spending a bit of time, tinkering with my team or writing an article or doing the research that not only helps myself in making some educated decisions from a fantasy standpoint, but, hopefully helps the AFL fantasy community as well.
Absolutely. I mean, my memories of your content has always been the cash cows. And I used to love reading that article every week because, in the classic game, it's one of the most important parts, the cash cows, the rookies, and how to make the cash off them. How did you find yourself writing specifically about that? Was that something you liked from the start, or is it just where they said, oh, all right, have a go at writing an article on the kids for us?
Well, I was doing way back when the day one fantasy crew will know, I was writing Fry's Forgotten Few each week, which was just a fancy alliteration going on for some pods or players with low ownership. So, as I was doing that, Jeppa was the cash cow connoisseur, and then it came to time where he said he couldn't commit as much time, and Warnie kind of said, I think there was a year that the Milkmen did it as well when I was living in Canada, but I forget exactly when, roughly 8 years ago, Warnie said, oh, look, the opportunity's there if you want to write about the rookies. And I've always been interested, like I've got a lot of mates that have gone through the system and played high-end waffle footy or been on lists. So I always enjoy looking through the reserves and looking through the draft each year. So, when he presented me with that option, I took it with both hands and, haven't looked back. So it's something that, every year when the draft rolls around, not only am I looking at their highlights and hoping the Freo Dockers get a good player, I'm thinking, all right, who has the fantasy game? Who's going to be the next pig? Who's someone that's going to benefit me in my keeper league? So, it's something that I'm definitely passionate about for sure.
Yeah, and that's why we're here, keeper leagues, like the classic games, all well and good, but we're not here to talk about that. How did you fall into keeper leagues, and how long you've been playing in them for?
I think it was in 2022. There was one that started up with a couple of other content creators and fantasy crew. Dunny, who also writes on the DT Talk website, he's kind of the champion of that league. He's won a couple of flags and just lost the grand final last year. So I think I've been in that one coming up to our 5th season, and just took over commissioner rights. But I was still kind of going through just drafting my favourite players, and I kind of default to doing that in Classic a bit as well, which can probably explain some of my 4-digit, 5-digit rank finishes. The default is it's a game, it's fun, so why not draft your favourite players? So yeah, I've been around the pointy end a couple of times in this one, but I think I'm about to go through a bit of a mini rebuild to hopefully launch back towards the top. So yeah, going into 5 seasons of that one, and then as I was saying to you pre-pod, I got really keen to try and start another couple of leagues and excited by the concept of starting an initial team again and trying to build a list. So yeah, I ended up launching 2 keeper leagues over this off season. So hopefully they can have a long tenure as well.
Yeah, and starting a new one is so appealing. And I've just done one with you, and I've done a dynasty one with some of my mates, which was a very deep one. And yeah, it's just so fun. You could see yourself doing it every year, but it's not really how a keeper league works. Yeah, great. So let's have a look at the community series. I know you had a busy weekend, long weekend over the west of the country. Did you watch many games? Get a bit of a look at Freo Adelaide, our boys going at it?
Yeah, I snuck a couple of them in. I also, thanks to KO, managed to watch most of the minis as well, which is just provides a little bit of extra layer of context. But yeah, I watched the Dockers and Crows match up. It was a pretty interesting clash just to see the roles of some players. Boy, Murphy Reid looked pretty impressive. I think people that, play single season draft probably bumped him up the order, and he's starting to generate a bit of buzz in Classic as well. But yeah, I didn't take too much out of the results. It was a lot of roles that I was watching. Tanner Bruin's another one that was impressive, but in that halfback role in the first half of the pre-season. So yeah, there was a lot of takeaways I'm sure that we'll dive into, but I managed to cast my eyes over most of them.
Yeah. Well, let's have a look then. I've got the names down that just some of the stuff that caught my eye and yours as well. And you said it just there, Tanner Bruin in that first game on Wednesday night, that halfback role, it was positively delightful as someone who did pick him up in a different keeper just the other week. And I can't even profess to say I saw the halfback role coming. I just grabbed him because I liked him the year before last, but he just looked super hungry for the pill. Like the 1-2s he was trying to pull off, the handball receives, and yeah, it's kind of hard to see them not sticking with that for the start of the season.
Yeah, he's a guy that, they've got Tom Stewart and Jack Henry, some real, serviceable backmen down there. Zach Guthrie as well, but Lawson Humphreys is one that burst on the scene as, gave them a bit of that dash and that pace and that flair. So to see Tanner Bruin slotting down there and doing a similar thing, if you were coaching Geelong and you see him having success in that role, there's no reason why you'd think about moving his magnet. It was also good to see that he kind of got a couple of midfield minutes and centre bounce snaps in the second half. So it's almost a perfect fantasy role, right? To be sitting at halfback and getting the cheap pill and then slinging into the midfield and hopefully laying a couple of tackles and getting some clearances. So yeah, one that should have a very, very good 2026 season.
Fingers crossed. A couple of Carlton guys. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of this guy, Fry. Have you heard of Jagger Smith? Yeah, he's just sort of snuck under the radar a touch. I mean, what a performance. Well, I know it was a practice match, but it was something to behold. And there's something really special about him, obviously, but to have a whole year of us hearing about how special he is, I'm sure I'm not the only one who was like, is he really going to be what they're saying he is? And he hasn't actually played yet. It was a practice match, but my goodness, he was electric all over the field. And his teammate Cooper Lord as well, who shouldn't be a surprise if you've tracked his last, 12 months. He showed signs of this last year, but wasn't given that midfield role consistently and was often the sub. But he's a a real points per minute guy, and that the Adam Chera injury helps him a lot. What was there anything surprising in Lord's performance? I don't think Jagger was too surprising.
No, I agree. Jagger, full disclosure, I've been trying to buy as many Jagger stocks as I can over the last 12 months because I knew he was going to burst on the scene. Did not know he was going to go 37 touches in his first pracky game, but I made sure to draft him in what the other startup keeper league I was doing and name my team Rolling Stones after him. So, I'm looking forward to having him as the M1 in my midfield for the next decade plus. But yeah, Cooper Lord, like you said, he's a player that showed a lot of flashes throughout the season last year. I think I even took the punt on him in Classic at some point as he was generating a lot of buzz and laying a lot of tackles. But yeah, it was just very inconsistent with time on ground and roles. So as you mentioned with Adam Chera's injury, that's going to open up a lot of opportunity for someone like Cooper Lord to fill the void. And I think he's shown he can do it at times in small spurts. And I think, the Carlton coaching crew will probably have a lot more confidence in him after seeing him go out and do it in the, against a real opposition, the grand finalists from last year.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he looked good. So did Angus Sheldrick. And I put him in a similar sort of boat in terms of guys that those points per minutes stats have been through the roof since he played. It's just that role and consistency. But he had 31 touches in the wet and absolutely set for a breakout. He was in my breakout episode a few weeks ago on Finders Keepers, and I put him at a predicted average of 91. And I remember when I put that out there, I thought, oh, it's a little ambitious, Jordan, but maybe not based on that game.
Yeah, it's just going to be if he gets that opportunity, right? Like I think we were hoping last year when Dean Cox took over that it meant it was going to be Sheldrick's season. But since he's got into the AFL system, he's just been, a bit of the whipping boy in and out in the sub-vest, hasn't had a real continuous run in it. And you look at some of the centre bounce numbers that I've got up here from last year, Isaac Heaney and Chad Warner were the main mouths that were fed in the Sydney midfield. But James Jordan, James Rowbottom, there's a couple of guys there. Then it's Angus Sheldrick. Surely if you want to be Dean Cox and you want to try and leapfrog back up the ladder, you give him the opportunity and put him over some of those other types. So, yeah, look, I'd love to manifest it. I've been a big Sheldrick fan. He was someone that his name's been written down a lot in my Cash Cows articles. So, it'd be great to see it come to fruition.
And these two boys, I reckon you've written about the last couple of years, Riley Bice and Matt Roberts. And it feels like Bice is a little bit ahead in the pecking order, and they both played in this game. Can you see them both in the side, or will it be a case of one on a flank with, say, Mills and the other not playing? Or do you see Roberts up on a wing? Can they coexist is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it's tough. I think the times where they did last year was when Callum Mills was injured, and Nick Blakey is probably the main distributor out of that Sydney back line. So I ended up drafting Roberts in one of those other leagues, and I'm not super confident about him. I feel like if I was, gun to my head, I'd probably put him underneath Bice in the depth chart, and that may mean, like you said, that he gets pushed up onto a wing in not as fruitful a fantasy role. So they can coexist, especially if Callum Mills, who tends to miss half a dozen games every year, cops another injury blow. But yeah, if I was to pick one and plant my flag on them having a more successful season and into the future, it's probably Bice.
Yeah, tend to agree. Mills injury, or Mills gets so fit that he ends up back in the midfield second half of the year. That could be the thing.
A bit of a role change needed, yeah.
Harry Rouston for the Giants. I mean, he was someone we were probably talking about before the pre-season, and the way the cards have fell with just all the injuries at the Giants. It's sounding like he's going to get that opportunity this year. He looked pretty good in the role on the weekend. I think he's someone that if you've put your stocks in, you're in for a pretty good start to this year. We're gonna get a look at this guy as an on-baller. And even Brent Daniels, he's going to miss the first month. It's just been so many. For Brisbane, Kadeen Coleman, started at halfback. Fancy that, hey? Now, it was just a couple of weeks ago, Chris Fagan had said, oh, we might put him forward. He might just have to play there for a bit. And then I did this big spiel on Finders Keepers last week about it's perfect. He can get forward status and then next year go back to halfback. And then the next week he's playing halfback and Fagan's saying, we'll try and settle him in halfback. So I think they're going to move him around depending on the matchup that week, half forward to halfback. What do you see with Coleman? If you were an owner who's waited, 2.5 years for his return, are you a little bit buoyed by seeing him on the halfback line, or do you think this is probably going to be a slow burn year?
Yeah, I'm not super optimistic. I'm a huge Kitty Coleman fan. I had him in that initial keeper league that I was talking about and ended up having to part ways with him just because I was getting nothing out of him, but redrafted him this year with the hopes that he was going to settle into that halfback role. But it may take 12 months. I mean, they've got guys like Wilmot and Fletcher who have really developed and come on strongly since he went down. And Dane Zorko has Benjamin Button syndrome and just won't go away. So for that reason, if Kitty's fit and he's playing somewhere, it may be, as you said, a bit matchup dependent. If they want to potentially play a bit of Dan Annable one week and then he's out of the team, maybe Kitty Coleman goes forward. It might be that if Zorko rests, Kitty Coleman goes back and can be a bit more of that designated kicker. So I really think we're going to get a lot of severe fluctuation between role, time on ground, and scoring this season. So that might not necessarily be a bad thing. We might get 12 months from now and he have defender and forward status and Dane Zorko's gone and he looks like he's going to be an 85, 90 type of guy again. But this year, I think, we've got to ride it out and there's going to be probably some rough patches, but he's 25. It's not like he's in his late 20s or early 30s. So I still have some hope that after this season and into the future that he can be a handy fantasy contributor, but this year might be a bit of a bumpy ride.
Will Powell for the Suns. Been training with the midfield in the preseason and with in this game he played midfield. Only Anderson and Petrarca had more CBAs, but I don't know. Matty Rao's got a return. Took Miller surely plays a bit more mid in the real stuff. I don't know. It's an interesting one, Powell, because we've sort of waited for him to kind of. He had that 1 year where he averaged around 80, I think, but every other year has been a disappointment. He's 26 now, and yeah, can you see him as a mid, or is this just a bit of adding flexibility to his role?
I think it is a bit of that. It's a bit of if, they want to trial a Noah Anderson at a halfback. Well, I know that that's something that's been mentioned a little bit. Maybe he spends, 10% of the game there, something like that. Then at least they're just trying to figure out who else can go into the midfield. Alex Davies is another one that got a lot of midfield minutes, but, if he's in the team, probably means there isn't room for Powell. If he's not, then maybe Powell gets a few more midfield minutes. So it's tough to get a strong read, but as a team that's, in full-on premiership assault mode, or they should be, given the success that they had last year, I think, and the recruitment of Petrarca and such in this off-season, I wouldn't be surprised if the main guys were Noah Anderson, Matt Rao, Petrarca. You get a sprinkling of Bailey Humphrey, similar with Powell and some other types, which, again, might be a good thing for him. He might have built a lot more confidence out of training with the midfield and seeing a few more minutes in there. But, yeah, it's tough to really gauge if it's going to be something that sticks.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting watch. Like you said, there's so many names that they've got through there, and Bailey Humphrey's the one as well that I think they're going to have to give him a look if they're going to keep him in the Gold Coast colours next year.
Yeah, 100%.
A few other names that are pretty popular in keeper talks that just run through, like Caleb Windsor, that centre bounce spot looks pretty assured heading into round one, which was a bit of a surprise when we saw that late last year. Jack Ross has been a favourite of mine for a few years as a guy that, he's just always on the wing. He's never been able to make the midfield his own. And in a flash, he's just one of the senior guys almost, with all the young Richmond mids coming through. But he played on the ball, and it just makes him a completely different prospect in fantasy when he's on the ball with that forward status. We've got the unfortunate news today that Cumming, the young Tiger, he's going to miss about a month. They've been very careful with Smiley. Hotton's going to miss a long period again. So, yeah, I don't know. We might just see Ross playing on ball for a bit Could be pretty exciting for those who probably grabbed him not that early in redrafts.
Yeah, he's someone that has probably slipped through the cracks in a lot of leagues. And, you mentioned some of the young guys that they're going to take their time with as well. They've got Jacob Hopper in there, who isn't exactly known for his durability. He always tends to miss a couple of games each year. So it might be that Jack Ross emerges as one of the main go-to guys in the middle there. He, especially, post buys, I think he hovered around 50-odd% CBA. So if you can be in that role and push an 80-plus average for the first time, then, as a forward, that's going to be awesome for, in an area that a lot of coaches are struggling to field guys that they have a lot of trust in. I know I am. Jack Ross could be a real gift.
It's one of those ones where it's kind of, if he does play on ball and loses forward status next year, he's going to want to be averaging 90. And then if he's not getting to that average, it's like, well, just stick on the flank enough to keep forward status. So it's a bit of a wait and see, but I reckon he'll have a good year. Riley Sanders, I feel like we've kind of given up on him a bit early. When I hear people talk about him, it's like, I don't know if he's going to get there. And he's in his third year, fourth year, he's still a baby. And he looked really good in this game, roaming the wings. He didn't really play on the ball. I think he's going to have a year. Him and Freya, a couple of Bulldogs to watch, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Riley Sanders is a player. It seems like it's a bit of a foregone conclusion that he's just going to join Tasmania when the time comes.
Yeah.
That, he's got. I think he's still got a couple of years on his contract. I don't know off the top of my head, but it sounds like he's just patiently waiting until the Tassie footy team begins, and then he can go that way. But I remember in the pre-draft, the big thing that everyone was talking about with him was just how much of a professional he was. Doing all the 1%ers, focusing on his nutrition, lifting the right way, not like overexerting and trying to put on too much muscle. So I think it's only a matter of time before we see him become one of the top premier midfielders in the competition. It might take a couple of years for him to join Tasmania and for that to come to the fore. But he's someone that I haven't sold any of my stocks in. It's been disappointing to see, some of his role at times, but he's a very capable footballer. And I individually haven't given up on him. And the role is just going to really probably dictate his scoring once again this year.
Agreed. This next guy from Hawthorn is someone that I think similar people are starting to say maybe it won't happen. It's Cam Mackenzie. And, in this game, who'd they play? The Saints, was it? Yeah. Or the Doggies. No. Anyway.
Hawthorn played the Doggies, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of talk, rightfully, on Connor McDonald, but the other C-Mac, Cam Mackenzie, he stood out to me, and he didn't score big numbers. It was just this period in the second half where he was on the ball, and it was right before he got the injury. Was it a concussion he got?
I think so, yeah.
He just showed a little bit. I think no one's talking about him. I think he's going to pop up and make the most of what is, a vacant midfield, really, like in terms of opportunities. So, Mackenzie's one, I think. He's still young too, but I think this could be his year.
There's opportunity there for sure. Hopefully, as you said, Connor McDonald's going to get a little bit, but I read that Jai Newcomb's going to be suspended for round one for opening round as well. So he's got a 1 week ban. So the first couple of weeks it might be a little bit all over the shop, seeing who's feeling the void in Hawthorn's midfield. But he's a type of player that finds a decent chunk of the footy and uses it really well, but he never has those massive mark and tackle numbers. And if you can start to push those, I think last year he improved his tackles quite a bit, but if you can push those to closer to 5, averaging in both areas, then he's got every capability of being a 90 guy. We'll just have to wait and see what type of opportunity Sam Mitchell gives him.
Yeah, and how long he gives him the opportunity. That's the other thing.
True.
They're always in and out. Lockie Blackiston, what a great game from him. I mean, this guy, so he came in the mid-season draft last year for the Bombers at a time where Essendon really didn't have any fit players. And so he was a ruckman from the Waffle, I think, and they just played him as a key back. And anyway, this pre-season, it's been all the talk that he'll be the man until Nick Bryan's fit. But in this game against the Saints, I mean, he more than held his own against Tom DeConning and Brian Marshall, pretty good names. And I think as a result, Nick Bryan owners probably won't want to hear this, but they're not going to rush him back, which is a good thing long-term for Nick Bryan. But they don't need to rush him back on what we saw from Blackiston.
No, it was impressive, wasn't it? I remember I was doing shopping or something and happened to just look at the score near quarter time and then very quickly went and checked in every one of my draft leagues. I was like, right, where is he on the waivers? Has he gone unclaimed in any league? And there's one bloke that beat me to it by about 2 minutes, the bugger. But yeah, he tackled really well when he was in the waffle as well. Like last year was really tough to gauge when he was at Essendon what type of footballer he was, because he was, playing purely out of position. But he's always been someone that, from the reports and the pieces that I've read, sounds like an ultra competitor, real aggressive type. So it was really encouraging to see him come out with a massive game in the AAMI. And, he wasn't going up against a reserves ruckman either. He was squaring up against Tom DeConing and Rowan Marshall. So, Blackiston owners should take a lot of confidence out of that.
Yeah, for sure. Archie Roberts is a guy who really burst out. Last year, but he did it the year before as well for half a season as a rebounding defender. And the talk in the preseason has been he's been training with the midfielders, which we hear about so many players. But we saw it in this game, and he had a fair crack at it on the ball. And it's interesting because the first time I saw it and heard it, I thought, they won't continue with that because he's too important in the back half. But even with Jordan Ridley injured, just for something different, they've got guys like, obviously Mason Redman, Zach Johnson, Angus Clark looked pretty good on the weekend in those roles. Andy McGrath, Jackson Pryor can play there in a wing. And then, of course, young Farrow, who's going to be a pretty big player over time. But I don't know, they might persist with Roberts in the midfield, maybe even just to start the season.
Yeah, especially with, Zach Merritt seemingly having one foot out the door. We had both feet out in the off season. I wonder if they're starting to look a little bit towards the future, and they're thinking that, while he's great and he entered the system as a defender, could he be someone that, takes the leap we've always wanted Andy McGrath to do, start as a defender and then become a full-time mid. So again, as we talked about with Tanner Bruin, it's a bit of that dream fantasy role. We just hope that he can keep getting the cheap pill in the back line. He's another player that I took early in the second keeper league. So, I've got massive stocks in him and think he's going to be a great footballer for a long time.
Yeah, it's exciting when you've got a half-back guy who down the track will be a mid. And then so early in the career, it's like, it might be happening now. Over to our game, Freo Adelaide. I'll touch on this guy and then I'll let you wax lyrical on Murphy Reid. But Judd McVee, I'm pretty invested in McVee. I've got him in a few keepers, and I was adamant that he'd get that rebound role and he could become Jordan Clark's new kick-to-kick buddy back there. He looked to be playing a lockdown role in this game and the week before. And he looked pretty, what's the word? There was a period where he gave away a lot of free kicks and was just making a lot of errors. So not a good start, but I still have high hopes. What's your take as a Freo man?
I think he's the type of player that complements our hypothetical best team really well. Like we have your dash from Jordan Clark, and then you've got Heath Chapman, who can be a bit of that tweener, can play tall, can play small, but I think he's going to be a bit like Brandon Starcevic for us. He's played that, lockdown role on the smalls. There'll be times where he pushes hopefully towards a 70, but similar. I've redrafted him in a couple of different leagues and invested him in draft leagues, had a look at him for Classic even, but he's never really had the opportunity. And I think Freo identified that, if they want to keep moving towards a premiership, then they're going to need someone who can be that lockdown defender while Jordan Clark is the one roaming up the ground. So there'll be times where he probably has decent scores, but I think, the proof's in the pudding. We've seen it. I saw it over the weekend and we saw it the week before. I think he is that small lockdown type.
Comparison to Brandon Starcevic is not the ringing endorsement I'd hoped. But talk to me about this guy, Murphy Reid. 30 touches, just absolute class. I don't think he becomes the predominant midfielder this year, not yet. But my goodness, what he showed. He is special.
Yeah, he doesn't have the same goal-scoring prowess, but it reminds me a lot of Robbie Gray, of that guy that's, kind of buzzing around everywhere, getting 20 to 25 touches a game. His hands in a lot of it and very poised with the footy. Yeah, he's a very rare footballer. He's, got excitement and dash at times, but like I said, he's also very poised and making the smart decisions. And then I remember Cal Toomey in the draft, as Freo nabbed him up, they were saying he was the best handballer in the class from last year. And there's sometimes he'll just do like a little tap on or a little things that you don't see from everyday footballers, just real smart initiative plays that spark a drive or a goal. So yeah, as a Fremantle fan, someone I'm very excited to watch, hopefully for a long period of time. It screams he's going to leave in 5 years and do an Adam Chera to us. But yeah, I think if you draft him in keeper league, he's from Victoria. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, if you draft him in your keeper league, it doesn't actually matter where he plays. So
no, that's true. That's what we're here for. It's not about Freo. Because there's a bit of talking classic about him. I don't know about it this year, but it's good for the keeper owners because I don't think he'll lose forward status this year or even next. So, happy days for Murphy Reid owners. Couple of Crows, Lockie McAndrew. I mean, it's done until further notice. He is lock and load, Adelaide's number one ruck. Can't believe it. What a change. I mean, I felt like this could happen last year because I remember when we recruited him, I was very optimistic, but he couldn't get past Rob last year. And in one summer he has, and watching him, it's very exciting as a Crows fan. And he's that perfect handcuff for any unfortunate Rob owners who are, in dismay that the big dog's not there anymore. But if you can nab McAndrew, you will be laughing. Luke Nankervis is an interesting guy. He has had a big season on the track. Lots of Crows interviews where they talk about, who's had a big preseason. His name's come up a lot. And, they've been looking at a halfback role for him. He played mostly on the wing in this game on the weekend. He just looked better than I remember him being. There was just these moments where he'd capture the ball and release it just the right time. And I thought, yeah, he does look a lot better than I remember. And what I do remember when he was playing consistent games was this is a guy with a fantasy game in him. You could just see it. So I'm really interested in this year for him. He has the mid status. The ideal scenario would be he does move to halfback, gets defender status. It's just tricky when you got guys like Cumming and I can't remember. There's so many names missing.
Not the same type.
Hinge. Mitch Hinge, I'm thinking of.
Yep.
To come back. But I don't know, you know much about Nankervis. Probably not a name you've thought about too often.
No, but he has popped into my thinking. He's a player that has definitely shown flashes, and yeah, he hasn't really had an opportunity to not only lock down a permanent role, but build on that consistency. I'm just looking, he averaged last year in the sample 80 from nearly 20 touches with half a dozen marks mixed in there. So he's got the capability to be that almost link-up guy, whether that is a bit on the wing or hopefully more halfback for fantasy owners. But yeah, his name keeps popping up. So, if he's there round one and early, and he's probably someone that could, depending on the depth of your league, you might be able to take a punt on and put him on your bench. There's potential upside there. So yeah, he's someone that I've got in a league or two, and haven't been too devastated when I've seen his name drafted. But yeah, wouldn't be shocked if he came out and had a pretty good 2026.
Him and Braden Cook, I think, are vying for that spot because he's had a big preseason as well. And he's got forward status, which is very appealing. On the Sunday, we had North. Finn O'Sullivan, got big midfield minutes. I'm really bullish on this guy. He played nearly every game last year, and there was a lot of talk that he only scored in the 40s and 50s. Not a big accumulator, but on the ball, I think he's going to go all right. He had 24 touches mostly handballs in this game, which tells me he's in and under. And that's a bit different to what we saw last year. I think he's a great example of a guy that's probably drafted pretty high in redrafts and then maybe let go at the end of the year. And someone will just say, oh, I remember that name. I'll take him. I think he's going to be good this year. Not, necessarily fieldable and huge scores, but we're going to start to see why he was rated so highly 12 months ago. This next guy, I'd love to tell you all about him, Tom Ramirez, but I'll be completely honest, I never heard of him. They only picked him up a week ago. So he's just arrived, racks up 24 touches off half back. How easy is this game? What do you know about him, if anything?
Shows how much of a sicko I am that I do know a little bit about Tom Ramirez. I was talking to some of my mates who are Eagles fans, and I said to them, if you hear this guy's name as one of the guys that they target with their extra 4 rookie spots, like, you've got a good one on your hands. So, West Coast losses, North Melbourne's gain. He came out and looked, like you said, just slotted straight back in. I thought this was this AFL business is pretty easy. So I was playing for Frankston last year, and I'm pretty sure he was working in Collingwood's like commercial or office department, like selling memberships type gig. So had to pack up his office and end up going down the road to Arden Street. But it was really good to see him just kind of slot in from a fantasy standpoint. It'll be interesting to see if he's there round 1 or if they give him an early game or what the go is. But I think that he's someone that as the year progresses, you'll see his ownership continue to climb, and maybe he'll end up being a keeper in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to see him not playing round 1 on the back of that. Same game, Bo McCreary is a guy Collingwood who's, I've heard talk of a midfield role for him in previous years. So he's always been someone just slightly on the peripheral of my radar, but he got that midfield role on the weekend. And I think with Collingwood, there's just a possibility that Collingwood go backwards this year and they start to look to the youth. They've got Ed Allen. We saw what Ned Long could do last year. McCreary's been around a while. I reckon he might get a bit of a look in the midfield. For Brisbane, used to be Brisbane. Devon Robertson is now at West Coast. Saw the name, I thought Brisbane. Yeah, so Dev Rob, he's got over there, and he's just quietly gone about it this preseason. I haven't heard a huge amount of noise about him in fantasy circles, but he was their main centre bounce attendee, and he had 28 touches. Tick and tick. What's your take on him as a West Aussie?
Yeah, big on Dev Rob. I'm surprised it took him this long, honestly, to land at West Coast. He's been rumoured to go there for a couple of years now. I ended up grabbing him in our league because I thought he might emerge as the main go-to guy for West Coast. You got Tim Kelly and Elliot Yeo kind of fading out. Harley Reid is, that explosive type, but you need someone in there to do a bit of the grunt work. And I think he's honed his craft at VFL level, waiting for an opportunity at Brisbane for the better part of 3 or 4 years. And now he's hopefully going to get the keys to be one of the Wayne go-to in the mid. So you got Tom McCarthy, which is, another kind of offensive, flashy type. So I wouldn't be shocked if Devon Robertson came out and was, putting down 6 to 8 tackles a game. Maybe not putting up the most consistent fantasy numbers, but he's someone that I'm really bullish on playing a role, hopefully for my keeper league team and for other fantasy teams around the country.
I think his biggest challenge is Jack Graham. They play similar roles. And
very true.
Hopefully Robertson, looks so good that they say to Graham, hey, get back to the half-forward flank and stay there. But we'll wait and see. Ryan Marrick, I talked about last week, surprisingly playing in that halfback role again that he had last year when he was a big player in a lot of leagues last year as a free agent pickup. And he was back there this week, took kick-ins, plenty of pill back there for the Eagles, unfortunately. And I think he's going to do it again this year. Just doesn't have the forward status, obviously, that he had last year, which was part of his appeal. But he's only like 22, 23. He's still young. And, I think he's a bit of a sneaky one people haven't thought about. For Port, just a couple of guys. Jack Watkins, and I thought, who? When I was reading about him, because I didn't even. Yeah, he's sort of come out of nowhere. 25-year-old mature age recruit in the rookie draft, but he's been playing for years in the VFL and then recently the Sandful. Only Will Drew and Connor Rosey attended more centre ball ups. I got that right. I said centre bounces before. Centre ball ups. He's interesting. What do you make of him? Because his presence is bad news for Will Brodie truthers like myself.
Yeah, I'm not going to try and claim that I know a lot about Jack Watkins. Blamirez I'd heard of. Watkins, not so much. So, yeah, he might be one that emerges as an important part of Josh Carr's midfield mix. I know, which, again, isn't great news for people that drafted Will Brodie. I think Ollie Wines as well might be dreading to hear that news. He's banned for the first couple of games, obviously. But, yeah, Watkins has been putting up numbers for years. As you said, first in the VFL, was in the Sandford Team of the Year last year. I think he made his debut really late last year. I could be wrong with that. But, yeah, I think he's someone that we should definitely keep on your radar and he might even be sitting in the free agent heap. So watch his name carefully.
Be surprised if anyone drafted him before that performance. And then the last guy is Todd Marshall. And I didn't believe it early in pre-season when we saw him training in the back line. But it does look like he's a defender now. He took 10 marks, 8 were uncontested, and he even took a few kick-ins. Do you think it lasts? Or, like, he's a forward, isn't he?
Yeah, he could be a real, diamond in the rough type. I don't know, because he didn't come on to the second half of the Pracky game against Adelaide, so I was stocks down, not really eyeballing him, and then to see him come out with a stronger performance against West Coast, I'm like, what do we read into him playing well against West Coast? It seems like that's a bit of a formality for our fantasy players. But the role was there, which is what we look for in these games. So, yeah, hopefully we can have Todd Marshall as a forward scoring like a backman, because that would be great, again, in an area that, depending on the depth of your league, a lot of coaches struggle to find fieldable players.
It feels like he's been around longer than he probably has. The injuries have, robbed him of a few years. That's for sure. All right, I reckon that's plenty from the AAMI series. I mean, we'll depth on more of it, but I'm really keen to talk about this draft we started.
Yeah.
So, yes, we did start the Backup Keeper League. Tommy Fry, I mean, you said at the start, it was a mate who was trying to get something and you were keen to start one. Give us a bit of an idea of the settings, the formation, and, captains on and off. What sort of league have we started?
Yep. So we've gone with 25 players in your squad, which I picked that number because there's no other keeper leagues that I've got that have 25. It's pretty common. I think most of the other leagues I'm in, we have 30 with, 5 defenders, 6, sometimes 7 midfielders, your ruck, your forwards, pretty similar balance. So with 25, we get 4 defenders, 6 midfielders, a ruck, and then 4 forwards, with half a dozen on the bench and an injury spot. Keepers on. I did want to try and tinker deeper with some of the settings, have like a draft your full squad, only no waivers on, and then you have like call it a draft every 6 weeks where, you drop players and then you redraft from the pool. And we may eventuate into the future, but it was really, to be honest, like I said near the top, just to own some of my new favourite players and to try and approach a new keeper startup now that I've had a little bit more experience playing it and, see how I go building a winning roster. So it was a ton of fun. I love the challenge. We had 12 hours between picks, which I find, given everyone's busy, parenting, working, their own social lives, their own footy commitments, etc., it just makes it so much smoother to get the draft done in a week or two. But we got thrown the extra curveball of having a guy in our league based in Scotland right now, as a mate of a mate who said, yep, he's a very keen fantasy coach, keen to join in. And then we got to bloody pick 6, I think it was, or 7. And we were like, why is this guy taking so long? And they're like, oh, it's because it's 2 a.m. in Scotland. We're like, why does that matter? I was like, well, that's where he lives. Well, okay, so this takes a whole new draft.
I had the pick directly after him, and I was absolutely hanging for my first pick. And then I was like, oh, we've got to wait for him to wake up on the other side of the world. Ah,
So yeah, that was quite
all right.
funny. But yeah, it's we got through the draft. We finished now, which there was a time there where I wondered if it was going to take the rest of opening round for us to finish our rosters. But yeah, it was a good experience. Like I said, it was a lot of fun to redraft a group and see if I could build a winning roster.
Yeah, and we're using the Keeper Fantasy platform, which I think has been such a welcome addition to the roster of options that we have for drafting. And yeah,
100%.
I've been a big fan since it arrived. It is just getting better and better. It was good fun and good banter as well in the WhatsApp group as well. Some of the fellas, so good fun. So let's talk strategy. And I'm a bit like you. I haven't done a new one in years, and I've been looking forward to doing a new one to see how far I've come, I guess. But did you have a strategy heading into the draft, and did you find it had to be altered the way the cards fell or the picks fell?
Well, I somewhat had the benefit of, as the name suggests, for the backup keeper league. I started the first new keeper prior to our drafting of this one. So in that one, I said to myself, I wanted to get a pillar for every line. I wanted to get a midfield, a defender, a forward, and a ruck, just as a potential tactic and just see how it fell. And I did do that. But then rolling into our league, I think I just wanted to try and take the best player available. And there were some of my guys that I was really hoping, players that I'm really keen on, that would slip to me, and then were drafted a couple of picks before. So I was forced to pivot a little bit. But I think what I've learned is if we're doing you're starting a brand new keeper league, the best thing you can do in the first, call it 30 odd picks, is to be a little bit flexible with your plan. If you go in saying, I want to get one of the gun rucks, and you have the 10th pick, and all of a sudden at 6, 7, 8, and 9, you see the top 4 go off the board, does that mean you reach for the 5th best ruck, who might be a tier below some of the other guys? So approaching our draft, I kind of went, a little bit look at positions at each time, but just take the best guy available. And then as I got into probably my 4th and 5th picks, I started to swing to a bit of a different tactic. But that's kind of how I approached it and the mentality I had at the start. How about you?
Yeah, not really with a plan per se, but more just attack the guys that are in their prime but not too old to start, and then get to a point in the draft where I can be like, can I win a flag with this first half a dozen players I've got? If so, keep going under that track, and if not, all right, let's scoop up all the kids and start to build for the future. But in the end, I found it was pretty balanced what I landed with. And yeah, I didn't have to pivot too much throughout the draft itself, which was good. How much time, Fry, do you spend during the draft looking at the other squads, who they've picked so far and what their needs are? And does that sort of help you determine what position you might target next?
Because I had the 3rd pick, I was very fortunate to get Messiah Wanganeen Miller. I kind of went in, I did a virtual draft order. I promised there was no fudging of numbers. And I think it's part of the reason why I did a second one as well, is I just wanted a top 3 pick so I could get Dacos, Sheasel, or Messiah. And the first league I did, I had picked 7 or 8 or something. So I was chuffed to get him with my 3rd pick. But what I found is quite often, in answer to your question, I was looking at a lot of people's teams, and there was a few times I looked through Jordox and was like, oh, yeah, crap, he's building a pretty strong lineup, and I probably need to get a bit more serious here. And thought that about a couple of blokes. But being where I was, there was obviously the swing of 4 picks between my, call it 1st and 2nd pick in each round. So, and then I had a big long time to wait and reassess and kind of come up with a bit of a different plan. So I know we'll talk about my ruck strategy, but I at one point was looking about picking a ruck, and then I thought, okay, well, the guys who are on that side of the swing, they've both got ruckmen. So if I'm going to target one, it's going to be with my 2nd pick around there. Like, I'll wait 4 or 5 more picks. I'll draft a guy that I think they're going to take. And there were 2 or 3 times. One when I got Murphy Reed, one when I think I drafted Lockie Neal from memory, another type that I was really chuffed to get. And then on the swing back through, the player that I thought would be available was. So I think, your positioning in the draft order and having a look at other coaches' teams and their lineups is really important, because then you can kind of get a lay of the land as to who may be available next time around when you're picking as well.
It's a really good point about where your pick is in the order, because if you're close to the turn, you've got that longer wait after you've had your double, and makes sense. So we'll give our first three picks and maybe just touch on them. For me, I had pick 6, and I was I really wanted one of the top 4. Dacos, Sheasel, Naz, or Goulden. I would have been happy with any of them. Not to be. So it was really just about who went at 5 that determined for me, and it was Butters. So that left me with Bailey Smith, which I was pretty happy to do. Do have some reservations on Baz, just with some of the, call it behavioural stuff, I guess. But he is at a club that are very good with that type, and I'm sure he'll be fine. And then second round was Brayshaw, who, is pretty solid and consistent, has been for a long time. He's still young enough. Pretty happy to package up a couple of top mids. And then the third pick, I went early on DeConning because I'm really bullish on him. And I knew I could get him if I went that early. If I waited any longer, you just never know. As soon as someone else grabs a ruck, then they all fall. So, I was pretty happy with them. Your three are interesting. You started with Naz, as you said. Then you went McKercher, second pick, and then Josh Dunkley. So you got a bit of a spread in age gaps there. What was some of your thinking with that?
Yeah, I, to be honest, didn't plan on going that route, but I did talk to you about this a bit throughout our draft. Once I landed Nasiah with my first pick, I started to think, all right, he's a defender now, but I'm not just going to own him for this season. I'm going to own him moving forward. So I believe that he'll be one of the first, if not the first, triple position players. If your weekend's anything to go by, he was playing midfield and pinch hitting up forward. I know he did take a kick in at one time just to keep the score ticking over, but I thought, okay, if Nasiah's a gun midfielder, then I want to, like I said, I kind of try to draft to have pillars in mind of players that I can really build around. And at that point, I was looking at a Flanders type, but then I thought, similar, he's going to go into the midfield. So I drafted McKercher, hoping that he can keep defender status at least for a couple of extra years. And then on the swing, it was just about getting someone who can be a cornerstone in my midfield for this season. And that was Josh Dunkley, who is one of my favourite fantasy players to watch, not just at the moment, but probably of all time. I love a bit of Josh Dunkley action. So, there were a couple of other types. Like I'm looking at the rest of the draft. Sam Walsh, I think, went a little bit after Dunkley. So did Isaac Rankin. And then obviously you took DeConing. So there were some players that I was keen on, but Dunkley's one that, again, it's going back to some of my ethos is a favourite of mine. So I decided to bite the bullet and take him.
Yeah, pretty good picks. I mean, obviously Naz is that out-and-out star that you get with the first top 3 pick, and then McKercher in the second round, maybe a fraction early, but I agree he's going to be someone, that just explodes, and it won't matter what position he has. And then Dunkley, in his late 20s, but still just romping it in. So I think it's a very solid start defender, 2 defenders and a mid. Now, talking positions, you didn't take a ruckman until the 19th round. And at that point, you went bang, bang. You went 2 in a row. You went Wits, and then you got Nank. Was that planned ahead of the draft to just punt rucks till late and just pick up a couple of older fellas? Or did you have your eyes on someone earlier and you just missed out?
I may or may not have had my eyes on Tom DeConing, to be honest, because
Nice.
I've got Tim English in one league, Luke Jackson in that other startup. And I tend to Brody Grundy in another league, so I tend to go somewhat early. So I kind of just wanted, as I was approaching our draft, to see where the big guys fell and then maybe bite on a Kieran Briggs or someone around the middle rounds. But as the draft kind of went on, I started to build a team that I thought, okay, I've missed out on some of the A grade cornerstones you can build around, a Will Ashcroft type, a Nick Dacos. Nasiah probably fits into that, so that's not entirely true. But I started to think, okay, who can be a player that's going to help me win the league next year? Because I got to pick 63 and Tom Green was still sitting on the board. So I snapped him up. And then 2 rounds later, I grabbed Nick Martin. So as I kept grabbing guys like that, like I grabbed Jake Bowie with about 140. I mentioned I grabbed Lockie Neal. As I kept drafting these guys, I thought, okay, I can wait a little bit longer in a ruck. I'll grab one. Oh, there goes Briggs. That's okay. And then it got to the point where you took Nick Bryan, and that was right around the mark where I thought, okay, I'm going to need a starting ruckman now. There's, 13, 14 of them are gone. Who can I pick? And I thought Brian might be one that I can pick. And then on the swing, I can get a Jared Witts or a Nankervis type or someone to, hopefully be a starter until Nick Bryan's back from his knee and he's fit. But, I got greedy. I took Jared Witts and then thought I could wait 14 picks and come around and I would grab Ned Moyle. And that was my tactic, was to kind of handcuff the two together. And then about 3 picks before I got to that spot, Ned Moyle went. So I grabbed Nankervis with pick 198, and I wasn't too bad to get Witts and Nank. And I was having a look at the free agents earlier. If it hits the fan, I think Mark Pitnett's still there. So hopefully I can get someone that can still put up a fieldable score. But it was just a bit of a different approach because I tend to target a ruck early. But I thought, the opportunity to draft the guys like Green and Nick Martin and injured Jake Bowie when they popped up were too good to pass up. So hopefully as I launch into next year, I've got a real healthy list of lots of guys in their primes, Josh Dunkley, who's not yet over the hill, fingers crossed. Make a real run at winning a flag next year.
Yeah, and it's interesting that grabbing Witts and then trying to grab Moyle, you're almost better off grabbing Moyle first. And then, because people are less likely to grab the older Witts than the young, and people are, quite mean-spirited. Like, oh, he's waited this long. He's grabbed Witts. I know what he's doing. I'll just take Moyle. I don't need him, but I'll just take him. But yeah, it is interesting, the rucks, really interesting. I know in the dynasty that I've started, we had one guy, he just would not touch the rucks. He waited and waited and waited and waited. Eventually he grabbed Liam Reedy, and then someone else grabbed Pitnett just to stuff with him. So his plan had been, I'll get Reedy and Pitnett together. So yeah, we're all pretty nasty sometimes, but hey, that's the game. And
none of us are playing for second.
No, that's it. I think as well, when you see someone not picking a ruck, it can be annoying because it's like, oi, everyone else has picked one. It's time for you to do it. So you might try and force their hand. Another really interesting thing in ours was Jagger Smith didn't go until the 9th round at pick 84. Now, this draft was started before that Wednesday night masterclass against Geelong. And clearly, I did a dynasty the next day and he went 2nd round. So
wow.
How much do you reckon live data and events impact a draft? And do you think commissioners or whoever's making the decision, you need to consider that when deciding the date of your draft?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think it's huge because it wasn't a coincidence that there was a big pause between picks at our draft, and the Melbourne game the Essendon game kick-started, and then we saw Blackiston and Zach Johnson scoring really well, and then they were both the immediate 2 next picks. So it's something to consider. I think ideally you would be doing your draft as the kind of practice matches are finishing up, and you're getting a lot of samples of data, but not anything that's going to move the needle too much, because it's almost like a bit of a cheat code. Like, I think I ended up grabbing Jagger pick 50 something in the other league I've talked about quite a bit, but yeah, for him to slip to 84 is just an absolute gift.
It's crazy. And I think you're almost better off doing the draft before any footy is kicked or after the practice matches, so you don't have the overlap of live games. But that, that's part of it as well. It's part of the fun. And it's not a hard and fast rule, but if you want to avoid the impacts of live stuff, you got to go before or after.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess before we finish up, I mean, just you had a bit of a good advice at the start about being flexible in your first sort of half a dozen rounds in terms of strategy. Is there any advice you could think of if anyone listening is doing a new startup keeper this week? What would be some advice?
You definitely need to have some form of plan. And I think it's really important, as we talked about as well, understanding where you're picking. Because if you're, close to the edge of the turn and someone's filled their defensive line, but they've only got 2 out of 6 midfielders, they're probably more likely to grab a midfielder with their next pick. So you look into those things as you're going through the draft and understand, the people drafting around you. If you're drafting, you got the benefit of drafting with mates, and you got a guy in your league who's an absolute Collingwood nuffy. You can probably he's probably going to reach on a few of those players. So understanding the people in your draft is important too. But look, like I said, I've been lucky enough to win 1 or 2 drafts and dynasty premierships, but not a ton, because my philosophy is always just to grab your favourite players, because it is a game, and I have the most fun when I've got my favourite player who I like watching, who in our league will most likely develop into Murphy Reid. Watching him run around now when I go to games and watching on the TV, I'm like, oh, awesome. I know that he's not only contributing to my favourite footy side, but he's also racking up for my keeper team. So, yeah, they're just a couple of tidbits to consider. Have a bit of a plan and understand where you're picking. But if in doubt, a good tiebreaker is who am I going to enjoy watching the most?
Absolutely. I think the tiebreaker I use when there's 2 guys is which one is going to be more painful if he breaks out this year and someone else has him.
That's a great shout as well. Yeah.
You work that out and you find your heart, who your heart's connected to the most. Really good advice. Yeah. So I think the thing I'd add would be, especially if you're kind of new to a keeper and you've come from single season drafts, don't get too obsessed with youth and it has to be young, because you need a balance even in those first few years of experience and youth. And just watch for some of the experienced guys that fade. I mean, even in the dynasty we did, Bont didn't go for a few rounds, Bontempelli, and he's 30.
Yeah.
But, yeah, staggering. And it makes sense. There's a lot of young guys ahead of him. But, yeah, I think I at times get caught up in, no, he's not young enough. No, he's not young enough. Sometimes it's just the right time to get that guy.
Yeah, I almost followed a little bit of the opposite. Like I said, once I grabbed Dunkley and I grabbed Heaney with my next pick, I'm like, all right, I got a couple of these guys that are in the mould of your late 20s, even early 30s when I grabbed Lockie Neal. And I was like, it's okay because I've still got enough youth. We're only keeping 12 of these guys. Like I'm going to draft guys who might be towards the twilight of their career, but they're going to put up points and it's going to put me in a strong position. So, yeah, don't be afraid to grab a proven gun if they're sitting there staring at the face.
That's another good point. Know how many keepers you're carrying because that does play a part. You might look at a guy and go, oh, I really want him. It's like, yeah, but what are the chances you're going to have him and hold him into the next year? You're better off getting guys that will be like that. And then obviously throughout the year, jump on whoever you can. I think that's it, mate. That was good fun. I really enjoyed having you on. That was great. Yeah. Thanks heaps for joining us, mate. Like I said, been a fan of your work for many years. Great to meet you and have you on. Why don't you let the listeners know where they can find you on the social media world and any podcasts, YouTube? What are you up to at the minute? And where can we find your excellent content?
Yeah, thanks, mate. Appreciate you having me on. Like I said, it's nice to put a name to a face and, sit down and talk fantasy footy. It's never a chore. So I'm back doing the cash cows again, as some of you probably already know, on the Dream Team Talk site. So I'm going to drop my big season preview piece on the Wednesday before Richmond Carlton clash. So you can check that out there. And on the socials, you can find me at Sports by Fry on all the good platforms. So, yeah, thanks again for having me on. That'll do us for this week. Before I wrap up the pod, though, I do want to just give a quick plug
for the Coaches Panel live event is this Sunday night, day before Labor Day in Victoria, at the Wheat, Wine and Whiskey Bar in Collingwood. Coaches Panel are doing a live podcast with exclusive team reveals, analysis of preseason talking points, live Q&As, plenty of special guests. And if you come along, you get to meet MJ. And I can tell you, he is as much of a legend as he seems. He's a ripping bloke. You might get to meet me as well. I'll be there playing my role as well. But yeah, come along. I just think it's going to be such a fun night. We've got the live pod starts at 5:30, and then we wrap that up at 7, and then we'll all kick back, have a few drinks, and watch Collingwood St Kilda on the big screen. So Coaches Panel live event this Sunday at the Wheat, Wine and Whiskey Bar in Collingwood. Go to the Coaches Panel on X or their website. I'll post all that during the week to get your tickets and come say good day. But apart from that, that is it for Finders Keepers this week. I'll be back next week with a big episode reviewing Gather Round. That's right. Not Gather Round. God, good one. Opening round. Opening round. I've got Gather Round on my mind because I was looking at accommodation this week. I'll be reviewing Opening Round next week. That's right. Can you believe it? Season 2026 is about to start. Very excited. So tune in for that next week. But in the meantime, I'm Jordox. This has been Finders Keepers. And until next time, keep on keeping on.